Hello guys, my name is Sebastiano Guerriero and this is the first of a series of tutorials I'm working on for MediaRoot. Today we are going to create this nice looking illustration in Photoshop. We will play with grunge brushes, wood patterns, the pen tool and the Photoshop layer masks. But let's start with the material we need to realize this illustration. I used two sets from the MediaRoot library. One is a premium set of 50 grunge brushes, very useful if you love subtle, dirty effects in your designs. You can download the set at this URL right here. And these are great, but of course any other set of grunge brushes will work just fine. And then you can download for free this set of handmade wood vector patterns I created for MediaRoot. Here is the web address where you can find them. Okay, now let's jump in Photoshop. Okay, so create a new document in Photoshop, 800 pixels by 600 pixels. Okay, RGB with 72 for resolution. That's it. Okay. Now just one note before we start. We are not going to create an illustration identical to the one I showed you before, and there is a reason. The purpose of the tutorial, in general, is for me to explain and for you to learn new techniques. It's not just about copying and pasting a bunch of layer styles and the same colors and so on. So personalize your work. I'm going to do the same. Actually, for this new illustration, I'm going to using even different colors, a different color palette. So, step 1. Double click on your layer to modify the background color. Okay, in your layer style window, select color overlay and choose the color of your background. I'm going to use a nice yellow, something like that. Yeah, that will work. Okay, now let's create a new layer. Select the brush tool. Yeah, and I'll upload the set of 50 grunge brushes I showed you before. That is on my desktop, actually. So, here is the set. Okay. Now the set is uploading. Okay, finally we have the set ready. So just pick up one of the brushes and click on the new layer. And that's it. Finally, yeah, just reduce the opacity to make the effect more subtle. Now select both layers, and press Command G, Control G if you're using Windows, and in this way you group the layers and you can change the title of the group to background. Now we need to create the axe. To do so, I generally use a reference image, not because we want to reproduce the same kind of image, something very realistic. As you can see from my illustration, it's more a cartoon style illustration, but references can be very useful if you want to speed up your process. So I just downloaded this image from Google, and now I can use it as a template reference. If you press now Command T, or Ctrl T on Windows, you can activate the transform tool and then you can rotate a bit your image. Now select the pen tool to create the shapes. I know the pen tool is a bit tricky for the beginners, but the sooner you learn how to handle the pen tool, the sooner you will understand how indispensable it is. And we are going to create two main shapes, one for the wood handle and one for the metal piece. So let's start with the wood handle. As you can see, I'm not really following the shape of the reference. I'm kind of improvising a bit. That's because if I create the same shape of the reference, I'm gonna end up with something too realistic, and I don't want that. Okay, now just let's complete the shape of the handle. Okay, perfect. Now we can deselect the reference, and if you're not satisfied with the main shape you just created, you can modify it by selecting the direct selection tool. So just select direct selection tool or press A and click on your shape to make the anchor points visible. Now you can just click and drag to move the anchor points, thus changing the shape of the handle. Okay, I think it's okay. Maybe just one more. And that. Okay. Okay, perfect. Now we can create the metal shape. As we did before, we select the pen tool and now back. Okay, so play with the anchor points like I'm doing with their extensions to realize a good curve. Just like that. Again, click and drag. You're obtaining these extensions which allow you to realize good curves. Okay. And we are obtaining our metal shape. Then we can close the shape. Okay. I'm not really satisfied with the metal shape I just obtained. So again, I can grab the direct selection tool to modify it. Here we go, direct selection tool, and I can play a bit with the anchor points until I am satisfied with the result. Now it's going much more better. Again, just one bit, just to make it looks perfect. Okay. Okay, now it's okay. And as you can see, we have these two separate shapes. Now remember that when we create these kind of illustrations, we don't need to be too precise. We're not working on a realistic style, so don't bother yourself if the axe doesn't look realistic at all. Now double click to add some style to the wood shapes, double click to activate the layer styles, otherwise you can of course right click on the layer and select the blending options, it's exactly the same. And for the color we can use some dark brown. You can see colors are ending up very different from the original illustration. Yeah, you can see I used a much more lighter brown, but it's not a problem at all. These new colors will work just fine. Okay, now let's add a stroke effect. A 5 pixel stroke should work just fine. Yeah, 5 pixels. Select inside as position, and let's select as a color a very dark brown here. Something like that. Okay, that's perfect. Now it's the turn of the metal shape. Again, let's open the layer style window. Quick tip here, when you click to activate the color picker, you can have the same color of another shape simply by clicking on that shape. You see? Okay. Now for this specific shape, let's use a nice looking gray. Something like that. Okay. Now again a stroke of 5 pixels, like we did before. And for the color of the stroke, we're going to using the same color of the stroke of the handle shape, and inside as position. Perfect. So the main shapes have been stylized. One more thing, we can select the ellipse tool, then go here, hold down Shift and Option is Alt on a window, and click and drag. By holding shift, we maintain constant proportions. You can see here what happens if I don't hold down shift. Well, if you press shift and click and drag, you are getting perfect circles. Okay. Now right click and copy the metal shape style. Then select the ellipse tool, right click and paste layer style. Press Command T. Now to activate the transform tool, this point zoom in and make the circle a bit bigger. Okay, looks nice. Okay, what do we do now? We just at this point we need to apply the wood texture to the wood shape. So with the wood shape selected, we just need to press Command G or Control G if you're using a Windows to create a new group with the wood shape inside it. And I changed the name of the group with the title of your choice. I don't know, wood shapes should work. Now we are going to add some nice textures here. So I realized for you guys a nice free set of wood vector patterns. I already downloaded it and I have it on my desktop. So inside the set you will find this first wood pattern. There is one more with some grunge effects, and since they are vectors, of course you can resize them without losing image quality, and then there is this last pattern. Okay, let's use the first one, this one for this tutorial. Double click on it to open it in Illustrator. Select the vector and press Command C, Ctrl C on the Windows to copy it, and then switch to Photoshop and press Command P to paste the vector as a smart object. Now you can resize and rotate the texture. If you want to resize it, remember to hold down Shift every time you resize an element, and then press Center. Okay. Now you can, I wanted to move the pattern, but I moved the background, and that's because, let's one step back, okay, press Command Z. That's because, as you can see, I have auto select options turned on. Let's turn it off. Now if I select the text layer, title something like wood pattern, and put it inside the wood shape group, now you can position it without problems. One important thing, I want the pattern to affect only the area of the wood shape. How do we do that? There is a trick for that. So press Command G to group the wood pattern and title it something like texture. And now with this group selected, Command click on the wood shape layer to select pixels and press this button here to add the layer mask. This way we are telling to the group to display only the area within the wood shape. As you can see from here, with the layer masks, we decide which areas to display, the white area, and which area not to display, the black one. Now let's modify the color of the pattern. I want to choose a color which is lighter than the brown of the wood shape. Something like that. Okay. Let's reduce a bit now the size of the pattern. This way. Then maybe we need to modify a bit the position as well. And okay. Now what? It's perfect. If you zoom in, you will see that the textures is going over the stroke effect, and that's because That's because the stroke effect position is set on inside. So let's fix that. We need to duplicate the wood shape layer, and you can do that by holding down option and dragging the layer on top of the texture group. Now we have two identical layers. For the second layer, we just need to isolate the stroke effect and eliminate all the other effects. If you remove the color overlay, you get the original color of the shape, which is black. So to remove the black, you just need to reduce fill opacity to 0. Like that. Now I only have the stroke effect on top of the pattern. If you zoom in, you can see that our problem has been fixed. If I deselect the layer, the texture is over the stroke, but with this layer visible, everything is perfect. You can turn off the shape outlines by pressing Command plus H. Remember that we are working with Photoshop vector shapes. That means that they're like vectors. You can resize the final result without losing image quality. Now we need to add a white area here, as you can see from the original illustration. Here we go. And to create this area, we are going to use the same technique we just used for the pattern. Select the metal shape and drag it on the group button to create a new group with the metal shape inside. Now grab the pen tool and make sure to select white as fill color. Just here. And now let's create a new shape. So, always using the pen tool, let's click and drag, and let's use the anchor points to realize a new shape, a new white shape. Like that. Okay. Now you may be wondering, what the hell is this? But we are going to apply a new mask, like we did before, so the extra pixel will just disappear. If you command click on the metal shape, you will select its pixels, then you press add layer mask, and here we go. But again, we are overlapping the stroke effect. So to fix that, we need to duplicate the metal shape layer, just like we did before. Hold down Alt or Option and put, and you get, this way you get the new layer. And now if you deselect color overlay and you reduce fill opacity to 0, you have only the stroke effect. And if the white is too strong, you can reduce the opacity a little bit, and all 80% will work just fine. Okay, we are almost there. To make the illustration looks better, we can add some lights, and we can do that always with the pen tool. Remember the fill is always white. So the first one goes on top. So zoom in and create the first shape, just here. Always play with the anchor points and with the extensions to get a nice shape, which is our light. Okay. Now that it's ready, let's reduce the opacity to something around 30%. And maybe even lower. Yeah, lower is better. Now, let's add one more light, and here we go. At the bottom this time, and always the same game with the anchor points. And here we go. Okay. Once finished, again reduce the opacity. Now, one final light. on top of the metal shape. Of course, always using the pen tool. Zoom in and create this final shape with fill, always white. So here we go. This is the last one. Okay, now opacity is around 60 maybe. Okay, this time. Perfect. Now if we look at the original illustration, looks better actually. That's because I spent more time on the first one, but you must focus on the techniques and tips that I shared. You may come up with something even much more better than both my illustrations, and I hope so, which means that I'm a good teacher. So, you can see there are some other subtle grunge effects on top of all other layers. So before that, we forgot to create a shadow, and we create a shadow with the same technique. We used the ellipse tool, and we just click and drag. Okay, so the shadows is there. Let's reduce a bit the opacity. And let's put it in the right position. Call it shadow occurs and put it in the right position. Here we go. Lower opacity and the shadow is ready. So, maybe even better now. Okay, now on top of everything, let's create a new group. This one is the group for the grunge effects. And create a layer inside this group. Then switch the foreground color to white, and now select the brush tool, and like we did before, just pick up one of the brushes from the medial set. We click and we get this nice noise effect. Let's try with another one. Let's try maybe this one. Too strong. Maybe too strong. Let's try with another one. Okay, this one looks nice, but again, I'm looking for no more scratches. More scratches and less noise. Maybe this is the one we used before. Let's try this one. Yes, this one looks nice. This one works fine. Apply the sharpen filter by going to filter, sharpen, and then reduce the opacity of course. And that's it. We have finished. Now, of course, if you want, you can duplicate the axe to create a second axe, and you can duplicate the axe. Then you can go to Edit, Transform, and Flip Horizontal. Okay. Now we have two axes, good. Of course, there are some modifications to be done. An example, we should move these noise effects on top of, and maybe make invisible this noise effect inside the first axe group. Okay. Perfect. This light is not in the right position because there is an axe on top, so there shouldn't be any light at all. So we can make it invisible. Perfect. And now we should put one more shadow here. You can see from the original illustration. And here is the shadow. It's always a shape, always created with the pen tool. And there are two shadows here, and while we were using one single big shadow on the original illustration, but it's up to you, they both works just as fine. So that's it, guys, a pretty simple process, and you can see how the pattern, even how the pattern look, how the pattern look without the final noise, because maybe it's too much, and maybe they look even better without the noise. Maybe we just can decrease the noise a bit. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot for your time, and I hope to see you soon on MediaLoot for a new tutorial.